Well, this is the last in a series that I've been doing on the subject of how to be good. Next week's the beginning of Lent, and I was whittering on about Lent to somebody, and they said, "What's Lent?" So I thought I'd better say, Lent is the time. Does anybody know what Lent? I won't ask it. Lent is the time between what's called Ash Wednesday, which is when you see people they ash the forehead, which really represents dying to our smaller self and taking on the larger self. And it's a time of preparation between that and Easter, which is the moment of awakening, the moment of the resurrection. And so traditionally people have used that time as a time of preparation. And it's 40 days, and that corresponds with the 40 days that Jesus was in the wilderness. So it's quite a useful time to re-look at ourselves, to reconsider where we're at spiritually. You don't have to do anything, but I'm going to use it as an opportunity to do that. So we're going to start that whole series next week, and we're going to begin with the liturgy of ashing, where we actually do the ashing like that. To allow the divine to come through. So that's what we're going to begin next week. But in this week, as I said, we've been, this is the last in the series of how to be good. And we've been looking at responding to the times that we're living in at the moment with goodness. And in the first week, we saw that the root meaning of the word goodness is the ability to unite, to bring together two things that are a fit. And when you look at the secondary meaning of goodness, which is, kindness, benevolence, graciousness, and holiness, you can see all of that really is about bringing things together. It's about uniting. And of course, the ultimate way that we unite is to unite with the divine within us, to unite with God. We saw that in that first week, in truth, all of us are looking for a good society. That's really what everybody wants. And people have different ways of going about that. But there is a desire amongst all of us for that. And our role really is to work out how to respond to circumstances that come our way in life from a place of goodness. Then we looked at the decision to be good as being necessary before we start. You have to make a decision that this is going to be, that being good is a priority. And we talked about erecting the tripod of faith, doubt, and determination. You have faith around one's own goodness and what one does in the world. We have doubt about it, and the determination, and to actually do our spiritual work, not done for its own ends. It's not a nice to have, but it's a way of making our contribution to the evolution of consciousness. So each of us is making our little contribution that from generations, we're now it. We've arrived. We're alive. Everyone else is dead. And this generation, we're the ones that can make a difference in that generation to enact the Bodhisattva vow, which is of saving all sentient beings by adopting the Buddha path. Saving all sentient beings by adopting the Buddha path. In Christianity, that means taking seriously the Sermon on the Mount, which says, love your enemies. Now, everybody says, oh, yeah, it says that, but it doesn't really mean that, No, it means love your enemies. Do not resist the evil person. Go the extra mile. Feed the hungry. All that sort of stuff. And in Taoism, it's that your enemy is the shadow that you yourself cast. Your enemy is the shadow that you yourself cast. And the Tao Te Ching says, what is a good man but a bad man's teacher? What is a bad man but a good man's job? There's a connectedness of all of it. And in this way, our practice, our spiritual search has to be one, I think, of engagement rather than abstraction. It's about creating a sure foundation for our lives so that we become channels of peace from that peace within. Knowing that we doubt, we all think, well, what good is it for me? It doesn't make any difference. Knowing that we doubt, but having faith and determination to stand firm with that. And that whole thing is what spirituality is for. That's what our practice is for. That's why we sit on the cushion. That's why we do the stuff we do. And in a sense, that's why we're here now. I always love the thought that there's nothing that the agents of chaos fear more than the real presence of goodness. It's their kryptonite, real goodness. And last week we looked at leaning into the question of how we might respond. I sort of set up a forum, tentatively called the Aspen Initiative, to ask the question, how do we respond to the times that we live in? And we've just invited a lot of our colleagues, people who have come and spoken here before, to join us in that. He hasn't been here before, but he's a colleague, Tim Shriver, Cynthia Brogeau, Cyprian Consiglio, and Matthew Fox, all participating in that. And last week I spoke to Marianne Williamson, and having given me a thorough telling off for various things, she then agreed to participate in the program. She said, we've got to do something as well, all this stuff. I said, yes, I do know that, but we're looking for something that is non-dualistic approach. And she said, okay, I get that. And she's joined. And Sherry Mitchell, a Native American leader, came on board as well. Some of you may have read her book. And also Mirabai Starr, we missed her a couple of years ago, and she came on board. I spoke to her last week, and she's very keen on doing. She's a contemplative teacher. And if you're interested in any of that, if you go to our other website, aspenwisdom.org, you can see all the information about the Aspen Initiative. And the next stage of that is we're going to hold a webinar, hopefully, in the next few weeks with as many of those people, those puppies we can get into the box at the same time, and just explore that subject in a webinar. It's not going to cost anything. It's just, we really are exploring the subject. And for me, the question's genuine. How do we respond? I'm genuinely looking at what my response might be to the world at the moment. And it's interesting that we can ask about things from an academic point of view. It would be interesting to know if unity of consciousness can be proved by science. That would be interesting to know if that was the case. Or whether meditation has a positive effect on one's health. Interesting to know. Some questions, though, are much more specific. Being current, how do I fill in my tax return? That's a specific question. How do I replace the brakes on my car? There's no academic nature to that. There's, how do I replace the brakes on my car? And I think this question, how do we respond to the situation we're in at the moment, falls into the category, that latter category. It's not it would be interesting to know how I might respond, but WTF should I be doing? What should I be doing right now? What can I do? What shall I do? And the question is asked out of, I think, a call to action. And I think that does bring us back to the whole definition of good. The idea of good is of uniting. And the desire here is to bring about goodness, to bring about some form of uniting. And I think, we have reached a point of enough. Enough of separateness as being the default understanding of our place in reality. Enough of separateness as being the default understanding of our place in reality. The world is organized around the idea that everyone is separate from each other, that communities and nations are separate from each other, that me and mine are what we need to focus on. so that me and mine can get what we need. But in the end, me and mine are never satisfied. We can never really get what we want, actually. And if that's our focus, there will never be enough. They'll always want more, better, richer, easier. I mean, you only have to live in Aspen to know that. It's always more, better, easier, more convenient. And it's only when our attention is on we and ours, rather than me and mine, that we find that there really is enough in the world. When our attention is on everybody else and everything else, when it's out there, then we start to see what will work for everybody else. And our attention is much less on what can I get for myself. We begin to prioritize others. And as we do so, our demands and wants become less. They become less important. We realize that what we need in order to live is more important than what we can amass to satisfy what we want. What we need is less than what we have to amass to satisfy what we want, because our wants can never be satisfied, but our needs can. And so we put our attention outside ourselves. To quote somebody else, we love our neighbor as ourselves. And when we do that, when we love our neighbor as ourselves, do you know, there is enough to go round. This is the way that we unite. We make the needs of others our wants. We make the needs of others our wants. We see that it's better to solve other people's problems rather than just to focus on our own. Because other people's problems ultimately will become our problems if we don't deal with them. The person in need of food and safety in the inner city will take matters into their own hands, and it is us that they might steal and rob from. Better that we realize their needs and help so that they don't need to rob or steal. The country in need of help with feeding their population, that country will become unstable. It will create conflict. It will cause refugees to leave that country. And those problems will become our problems as we have to deal with the conflict and refugees at our borders. When we prioritize the ease and profit from fossil fuels, we have what we want in the short term, but the cost of climate change will make us immeasurably more uncomfortable and poorer in the long term. Separation is a short-term solution. It comes from a lack of understanding of what makes the world go round. And what makes the world go round is the interconnectedness of all things. That's what makes the world work. Plants, trees, animals, rain, weather, soil. It's all interconnected and it works seamlessly, regulating itself through its interconnectedness. Only humans demand to be separate. We demand special treatment, and that demand upsets the natural order of things, and so we end up exacerbating the problems. We end up with starvation, we end up with wars, we end up with refugees. With over-management of situations and underappreciation of empathy and compassion. The empathy and compassion required to allow the natural rhythm of life to regulate itself. When we see that we're not in fact separate, but are all of one harmonious whole, the first astronauts witnessed that from space. They saw that. that picture from space. When we see it from that picture of space, that blue organism working as one, then we come together as a planet and as a whole. Those astronauts saw that there were no lines on the planet delineating countries. There weren't any lines. All the borders and the problems have been man-made. We are all, in fact, a part of one ecosystem that requires cooperation for it to survive. And again, that is not academic. It's not an interesting idea. It's the way the world actually works. It's the way the planet actually works, by cooperation, by empathy, by responsiveness. This is the deep wisdom of the two great commandments: to love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your mind and all your strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. It is the ultimate connection. It describes the ultimate connection. The two great commandments to unite with God in our souls and to unite with our neighbors in our neighborhood. And this brings it back to the personal. From talk of planets and nations, we come back to our own goodness. How to be good as Nicholas or Maggie or Richard. And the way we do that is to unite with what's around us. We begin by uniting with God within, in whatever way we individually do that, and we unite with our souls, with our essences. We don't allow our minds to tell us that we're separate, and we go into our hearts, and when we do that, we know all at once that we are connected. When you live in your heart, when you come from your heart, you feel that connection. Our hearts tell us that we're connected to God through the peace that passes all understanding. We know it through the peace that passes understanding. That experience of peace that we have, whether it be in meditation, in prayer, in music, in walking in the mountains, that peace appears even when circumstances are very difficult. There's a peace. I've always thought when people say you can't prove that God exists, I always thought the proof is that peace that we experience in ourselves, irrespective of what's going on in our lives. If we can touch that peace, the peace tells us that there is infinitely more than our minds can ever imagine, and that we are a part of that. And then our hearts tell us that we're connected to all that's around us and that we're not separate. We feel it, we empathize with, we have compassion for, we can understand. And that understanding moves us to make our connections and help where we can. We are a living, breathing cog that fits in with everything else. And our role is to make sure that our cog is engaged with all that's around us. To be connected, not separate. To use that cog to unite the left and the right, the up and the down, the within and the without. That's what it is to be good in the world. When people say, "Are you good?" or, they're really saying, "Are you connected?" That's what they're actually saying, "Can you feel me?" There's a sense of that connectedness. It's all the same. And so we come back to the question of responding to the division and separateness that we witness and experience in the world. That's what's driving us. We want to say, enough. Because our understanding is that we're not divided or separate, that we are all together in this. Our sadness is that we're not feeling our cogs engaged. We tend to be free-willing in our lives while we witness disengagement all around. And we want to know how to engage, how to share the understanding of connectedness that we have, and how to have that make a difference by having people understand it, and therefore to see that to connect is the answer. To connect is the answer, not to be separate. To connect and not separate. And our frustration makes us want to pull the duvet over our heads so that we disconnect from the pain. But that isn't the way, just to switch off. The way is to connect, the way is to unite, and that's what it means to be good. And how do we do that? When we start, the way to start is we have to want to connect. We have to want to connect with a system that is not working. And that does take courage to connect with a system that's not working. We become engaged. We ask ourselves, how do we respond? When you see something dysfunctional, you just want to withdraw. But the real way forward is to engage and to respond, and then we take action. That's the way it works. We take action eventually. We don't throw our hands up in surrender as we feel the effects of the disruption in the world around us. We don't think, there is nothing I can do. Last page. One way is to protest. Placards, pitchforks, flaming torches, and, there is a place for that. Hitler was ultimately stopped in such actions by tanks, bombs, and military hardware. Others can do that. But I think our role is to find another way. There has to be a different way of doing this. It's all so traditional, and Einstein, it's just, trying to solve the same problem from the same consciousness that created in the first place. It's all of that. A way that is commensurate with our understanding. That's what we're looking for. That goodness comes from uniting. That there is a lack of understanding at the root of the problems that the world is facing. An understanding of the interconnectedness of all things. That is the foundation of what's going on, of the problems. And we have to find a way of creating the understanding. We have to find a way to create that understanding. And that understanding has gradually been emerging over the centuries. It's gradually happening. As you see the evolution of consciousness, it is the evolution of that understanding. As, gender, consciousness, global consciousness, racial consciousness. As that has developed over the years, it has been about the fact that, do unto others as you would have done to you. It has been about that. We have to find that. When I talked with Marianne Williamson, she spoke of the Course in Miracles advocating that we place ourselves above the battlefield in a place where there are no sides, only a desire for unity. And I think that's what we're reaching for, a place above the battlefield. How we do that is what we're trying to discover. But it is worth trying, I think. Thank you. What a beautiful composition, Harris. That was absolutely fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. That's lovely. So we do always have an opportunity to share in our gatherings here. If you want to come back to me, anything I've said, or share something separate, or ask a question, or anything like that. Camille, yes.
Thank you, Nicholas. Thank you, Heather. It's all energy work. Science has proven that everything is a vibration, and we are that vibration, as well as that chair, the floor, everything. I do energy work. I work with the archangels. One way to get above the battle is to let the angels work for us and with us and raise us. I've put together a map, which Nicholas suggested I do, of the 60-some places I have cleared over the years, raising energy, helping sales. I've done 3 different hotels. The Limelight, the Hotel Colorado, I work on the Redstone Inn as well. And 2 of them sold. And I was brought in specifically to get the sales to happen, to clear that old, stuck energy. So I say, let's clear our stuck energy.
Good, thanks. Anybody else? Anybody like to say anything? Yes, thank you, Norman.
I always think you plus me equals we.
Yes, that's lovely, thank you. That's great. Yes, there we are. Maureen, thank you.
Thank you, Nicholas and Heather. This is really, I guess, an observation and also a book recommendation. For those of you who follow Arthur C. Brooks, he spoke at Ideas Fest a few years ago, and he's literally a professor of happiness at Harvard. It's kind of his nickname, I guess. But he is all about, his last book was called From Strength to Strength, and it was a book about how you evolve a career, whether you were a business person, raising a family, whatever it is, into your next chapter of life, whether it's retirement, and you don't let your ego swallow you up and you disappear, but you take these strengths into new things. But anyway, the main point I wanted to make is that he does a newsletter every month, Arthur C. Brooks, and he talks about this. And he's an avowed, very conservationist, but he is all about civil communication and how we do that. And it's exactly what you're speaking to. And one of the things he talked about at the Ideas Fest a few years back was one of the most common signs of disrespect is eye rolling. And, we're in an environment now, both politically, geographically, from our climate perspective, people have different opinions, and the immediate reaction can be something like that. But he's really teaching the art of bringing that civil communication back together to recognize exactly what you're saying, that we are one planet. And regardless of how many parties we have governing it or whatever, we have to find that way of bringing ourselves back together again. So he has a great newsletter once a month that I thoroughly enjoy reading with lots of wisdom.
Well, Maureen, if you send me the link to the
Sure.
newsletter, we'll put it on the Wednesday email, which is the email where you get the recordings and things like that. And I'll put it in that. If you send it to me, I'll put it
He
in
does
that Wednesday.
podcasts. He's lovely.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for that, Maureen. Yes.
Visiting from Cambridge, Mass, and if you want to be good or happy, 2 words, help someone this week. If you want to be less lonely, never worry alone. And if you're anxious in this time, set 20 or 30 minutes and worry and be anxious, and then let it go. Let it go. You manage the anxiety, let it not manage you. And if you want to achieve something this next month or year, hasten slowly. And thank you for the beauty of your chapel.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Thank you. Anybody else like to make a contribution? Jan.
Just a quick shout out and thank you to the musicians. Just to say for myself that before I go running out into the world to try to do anything, it's a matter of tuning up. And so there are many ways to tune up, but to listen to, and that fiddle, your intonation is perfect. I mean, perfectly on pitch. So there, just to say, there's so much really great music available for us to listen to. Just, and then we can start stepping into the world with a light step.
Thank you. Thanks, Jan. Thanks. Anybody else? Great. Willie. Very quick, Willie, over at the back.
Oh. Just to continue Jan Garrett's commentary, I just wanted to recognize the life of Trenton Allen Harrison, who passed away of cancer this winter, and his contributions to the local music scene. May he rest in peace, and peace be with you, brother.
Thank you, Willie. That's great. Thank you. Yeah, we'll be mentioning him in the prayers as well, I think. Yeah. So we're going to go have our offertory now. If you'd like to make a contribution to the workings of the chapel, just do come up while Delaney and Harris are playing and put something in the plate. You can use the QR code. If you're watching online, do feel free to use the donate button. That's going to be up there. And do that while Delaney and Harris are playing. Thank you.